The night was cold. The city lights flickered weakly and smoke drifted from broken chimneys. On the edge of the colony where no guard ever walked lay a forgotten alley. Few people ever went there. It smelled of rust, smoke, and hunger. Elior walked home slowly after another long day at the shipyard. His hands were rough from work and his jacket was thin against the wind. He carried only one thing with him, a small container of hot stew. It was not much, just enough for one man's dinner. He had saved his coins all day to buy it and his stomach already growled. But as he turned into the alley to take a shortcut, he stopped. Something moved in the shadows. At first he thought it was just stray animals. But then he heard it, soft coughing like a child trying not to cry. Elior's eyes narrowed. He stepped closer, and there, huddled against the wall, were children. Their clothes were torn, their faces pale, and their eyes wide with fear. There were 5 of them, maybe 6, all pressed together for warmth. He froze. On this colony world, orphans were everywhere. Many people walked past them, pretending not to see. Most believed they were thieves or trouble. But these children looked different. Too silent, too watchful. One boy, no older than 10, lifted his head. His lips trembled as he spoke. "Please, food?" The word was small, almost broken. Elior looked down at the container in his hands. It was the only warm meal he would have that day. His body screamed for him to keep it. He had worked 12 hours in the freezing yard, but he also saw their faces, thin, hollow, desperate. His heart ached. He knelt slowly and placed the container in front of them. Steam rose into the cold air. For a moment, the children didn't move. They stared at him as if trying to understand why a stranger would give away his only food. Finally, a little girl reached out. She picked up the container carefully as though it were treasure. They all began to eat, passing the spoon to each other, their hands shaking with hunger. Elior sat back against the wall, watching quietly. He told himself it was fine. He could go without one meal. But a strange feeling stirred inside him. The children didn't eat like normal orphans. They ate in silence, their eyes darting to the stars above as if afraid of being seen. The youngest, barely 6, looked at him suddenly. Her eyes were large, dark, and too calm for a child. She whispered something in a language he didn't know. The others stopped eating for a second, listening. Then one boy placed a hand over his chest and nodded at Elior with a strange respect, like a soldier saluting. Elior frowned. It was odd. These were no ordinary children. But he didn't ask. He didn't want to know. He rose to leave, his stomach empty but his heart strangely heavy. As he turned away, the girl's voice came again. Soft and haunting, "We will not forget." The words followed him out of the alley, echoing in his mind. Elior walked home through the cold streets, but he could not shake the sound of that voice. "We will not forget." Why would children say something like that? And why did their eyes feel so old? That night he lay in his small room, his body weak with hunger. Outside, the colony slept under the shadow of giant factories. But Elior stayed awake, staring at the ceiling. He wondered about the children, who they were and where they had come from. The stars shone faintly through the cracked window. For a moment, he imagined them moving. Vast ships in the sky, powerful and silent. He shook his head. Just dreams, he thought. But far away beyond the colony's edge, those same stars were not still. Somewhere out there, something had begun to move. Something that would return to him one day, and all because of a simple choice. A choice to give away one warm meal on a freezing night. 10 years passed. The alley was long forgotten, but the memory of that night still lived inside Elior. He was no longer young. His hair was touched with gray, his hands harder, his back heavier from endless work. Every morning he walked to the shipyard at dawn and returned home when the skies were dark again. Day after day he bent steel, fixed engines, and built parts for ships that he would never own and never ride. Life on the colony was not kind. The people struggled for food and water, while the rich and powerful lived in floating towers above the city. Elior never complained. He had no family, no big dreams, only the small comfort of living one quiet day after another. But some nights, when the city was silent, he dreamed. In his dreams, he stood under a sky full of stars. Not the dead gray stars of the colony, but bright living ones burning with strange colors. He saw a throne made of metal and light. He heard voices calling his name. voices that were soft and full of power. Sometimes he woke with his chest pounding, sweat on his face, as if he had just been standing before something great and terrifying. He never understood the dreams, and he never told anyone. Still, a question remained in the back of his mind. What became of those children? At times, when he passed a crowd, he thought he saw one of their faces. A boy with sharp eyes, a girl with calm hands. But when he looked again, they were gone. Perhaps they had left the colony. Perhaps they had died. He told himself it didn't matter. Yet deep inside, he knew it did. One evening, while eating his simple meal of bread and broth, Elior heard whispers in the market. Traders spoke of royal fleets moving across the outer rim of the galaxy. They said an ancient dynasty, thought to be long dead, was rising again. Some laughed at the rumor, others whispered in fear. But the words made Elior uneasy. That night he dreamed again. This time the dream was sharper. He saw children in rags becoming warriors in shining armor. He saw a great ship, its hull covered in royal symbols. And again he heard a voice. "We will not forget." Elior sat up in bed, gasping. The words were the same as that little girl had spoken a decade ago. He remembered her dark eyes, her whisper, her strange calmness. His stomach twisted. Could the two be connected? The next day at the shipyard, he worked slowly, distracted. His friend Dalen, a fellow worker, noticed. "You look pale," Dalen said, wiping grease from his hands. "Didn't sleep," Elior replied quietly. "Dreams again?" Dalen chuckled. "Careful, old friend. Dreams are a dangerous thing on this colony. Better to keep your head down." Elior nodded but said nothing. Dalen was right. Dreams were useless here. Food and coins mattered, not stories, and yet the dreams kept returning. Weeks passed. Life went on as always, broken machines, aching hands, long hours. The colony's leaders argued about taxes. Soldiers marched through the streets. Miners protested, but nothing changed. Elior tried to forget the visions, but the more he tried, the stronger they became. One night, a storm fell over the colony. The wind howled through the streets and lightning cracked across the sky. Elior stood by his window watching. For a brief moment, he saw something beyond the clouds. A flash of light, not like lightning, but like the engines of a great ship. His heart raced. But when he looked again, the sky was empty. The next morning, the market was alive with new rumors. Some swore they had seen a shadow move above the city. Others claimed soldiers had been asking strange questions. "Do you know a man named Elior?" He ignored it. Why would anyone care about him? He was just a poor worker. A nobody, but the whispers followed him day after day. The name Elior seemed to echo in places he never expected. At the tavern. At the docks. Even among the guards. And then one evening, as the sun sank red behind the factories, Elior walked home through the same forgotten alley he had once crossed 10 years ago. It was empty now, full of dust and broken stone. He stopped, staring at the spot where those children had once sat, hungry and cold. For the first time in years, he spoke aloud, though no one was there. "Where did you go?" The wind gave no answer. Only silence. But far above, beyond the reach of the colony's eyes, the silence was already broken. A ship larger than the city itself moved through the dark. Its hull was black and silver, its engines burning like suns. It bore the crest of a royal house long thought extinct. And it was coming. For Elior. The morning began like any other. The colony sky was gray, heavy with smoke from the factories. Workers marched to their posts, merchants shouted in the markets, and children played in the dust. Nothing seemed different, until the ground began to tremble. At first, people thought it was just another mining blast from the northern hills. But the shaking grew stronger. Windows rattled, tools clattered to the floor, and the air filled with a strange humming, deep and steady, like the beating of a giant heart. Elior dropped his wrench at the shipyard and looked up. A shadow was falling over the city, slow, massive, endless. When he stepped outside, the entire sky was dark. A colossal shape moved above the clouds. It was not a storm. It was a ship. The people of the colony gasped. Some screamed. Others fell to their knees. The vessel was unlike anything they had ever seen, larger than mountains, its silver-black hull covered in glowing symbols. The engines shone like suns, filling the air with an unnatural light. A whisper passed through the crowd. "Royalty, the ancient house. The dynasty has returned." Panic spread. Some ran to hide. Others pressed together in the streets, waiting. No one knew if this was salvation or doom. Elior stood frozen. His heart pounded. In his dreams he had seen this. A ship of light and power, a symbol burning in the stars. And now it was real. The humming grew louder until it felt as if the air itself was vibrating. Then, with a sound like thunder, beams of blue light cut down from the ship, striking the city square. From the light, soldiers appeared. Their armor shone with the same crest that glowed on the ship's hull, an emblem of a crown in flame. They carried long silver staffs that buzzed with energy. The crowd pulled back in fear. But the soldiers did not harm anyone. They formed a circle, their movements perfect, disciplined. Then one of them spoke, his voice amplified, echoing through the streets. "People of this colony, we seek one among you. Bring forth the man named Elior." Silence. Elior felt the world tilt. His name, spoken by soldiers of a royal fleet? People turned to look at him. His fellow workers stared, eyes wide, mouths open. Dalen, his old friend, whispered, "What have you done, Elior?" I don't know," Elior stammered. His legs felt weak. The soldiers repeated louder this time. "Elior, step forward." The crowd parted slowly, like water making way for a stone. Elior stood alone. Every eye burned into him. Fear filled his chest. He wanted to run, to disappear into the alleys. But his feet moved one step after another until he stood in the open square. The lead soldier approached. His helmet reflected the light of the great ship above. He studied Elior for a long moment, then gave a short nod. "Yes, it is him." Before Elior could speak, the soldiers formed around him. The circle closed, protecting him from the crowd. Gasps and murmurs rose. "Why him? He's just a worker. What does he have to do with the royals?" Elior tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. None of this made sense. The lead soldier raised his staff. Another beam of light descended, wrapping Elior in a soft glow. His body lifted gently off the ground. The crowd shouted in shock as he rose into the sky. His heart raced. The city shrank below him. The shipyard, the market, the alleys, all of it became small and distant. The faces of his people looked up in awe and fear, and then he was inside. The interior of the royal ship was vast and silent. Marble-like floors stretched beneath his feet, glowing faintly. Pillars of crystal rose into high ceilings filled with blue fire. Soldiers escorted him through long halls, their steps echoing. Elior's mind spun. Why him? Why call his name before all? At last the soldiers stopped before a great door. It opened with a hiss, revealing a chamber of silver and light. At the far end stood a figure cloaked in deep blue. Their helmet was smooth and faceless, hiding all features. Around their shoulders hung the royal crest. The soldiers bowed. Elior stood trembling, unsure what to do. The cloaked figure stepped forward, their voice calm, strong, and strangely familiar. "Elior," the figure said, "you do not know me, but I know you. Long ago you gave food to children in the shadows. You thought it was nothing, but it was everything." Elior's breath caught. The words pierced his chest like lightning. His mind leapt back to that freezing night. The orphans, the stew, the girl's whisper. "We will not forget." The cloaked figure reached up and removed the helmet. Beneath it was a face he recognized. Older, stronger, but unmistakable. It was one of the children from the alley. The boy who had once looked at him with sharp eyes, now grown, now powerful, now standing as a leader of the royal fleet. And he was looking at Elior not with pity, but with respect. Elior's knees felt weak as he stood in the glowing chamber. The boy he once fed, the boy who had sat trembling in the alley, now stood before him wearing royal armor, the crest of a dynasty burning on his chest. His sharp eyes had not changed, but there was something new in them now. Power, command, and an old pain that had never healed. For a moment, Elior could not speak. His throat was dry, his mind racing. The young man stepped closer, his voice steady. "Do you remember, Elior? 10 years ago, on a night when the cold could kill, you gave us food. You did not know who we were. You did not ask, but you gave." Elior swallowed hard. He remembered every detail. The broken alley, the steaming stew, the little girl's whisper. His chest tightened. "Yes," he said softly. "I remember." The soldier smiled faintly, though his eyes carried sorrow. "We were not ordinary orphans. We were the last children of House Verantis, the royal line thought destroyed in the Wars of the Stars. Our family was hunted, slaughtered. Our kingdom burned. Soldiers chased us from world to world. We hid in rags. We starved. We trusted no one. He paused, his voice lower now, heavy with memory. Until that night when you, a poor worker with nothing, gave away your only meal. You did not see princes or princesses. You only saw hungry children. Elior's heart pounded. The words seemed unreal. House Verantis, he whispered. He had heard the name before in market rumors, in fearful whispers about rebels and kings. A dynasty erased. A history buried. And yet, here they were, alive. The soldier placed a hand on Elior's shoulder, strong and warm. That act bound us to you. We swore that night that if we survived, if we ever rose again, we would not forget. And we did survive. We grew, we fought. We reclaimed the remnants of our house. The royal fleet you see above this world exists because you gave us the strength to keep going. Elior staggered back a step, shaking his head. No, I am no hero. I am no king. I'm just a worker. I am nobody. The young man's gaze hardened. No, Elior, you are the reason House Verantis still lives. Without you, we would have died in that alley. You gave more than food, you gave hope. And hope is stronger than any weapon. Behind him, the great door opened again. Soldiers entered, and with them came a tall woman draped in white armor, her crown gleaming faintly with silver light. She carried herself like a queen, each step measured, her eyes burning with quiet fire. When Elior saw her face, his breath caught. It was the little girl, the one who had whispered, "We will not forget." She was no longer a child. She was a commander, a queen in waiting. Her presence filled the chamber. She stopped before him and bowed her head, not as royalty to a subject, but as one human to another. Elior of the colony, she said, her voice clear and strong. I was the one who spoke to you that night. My words were not a promise of a child, but a vow of a crown. And now, after 10 years, I keep that vow. Elior's chest tightened. He could barely breathe. He had lived all these years in silence, in poverty, never knowing that a single act of kindness had rippled through the stars. The queen in exile raised her hand. Soldiers behind her carried forward a chest made of dark crystal. Inside it glowed a mark, a symbol of fire and crown. This is the seal of Verantis, she said. It binds families, it binds kingdoms. Today it binds us to you, for when we had nothing, you gave. When we were no one, you saw us. That makes you part of our house. Elior shook his head violently, stepping back. No, I cannot. I am no warrior. I am no royal. I am nothing but a poor man who fixed ships and starved quietly. I cannot be part of your house. The young prince from the alley stepped closer again. His eyes softened. You cannot escape this, Elior. The galaxy already knows your name. The enemies of our house whisper it. They will come for you, whether you accept or not. Better you stand with us than face them alone. Elior's mind spun. His chest felt heavy. Could it be true? Was he already marked, already hunted because of a single choice made a decade ago? The queen stepped forward, her voice calm but sharp with destiny. You think you are no one, but the galaxy has already decided otherwise. You fed orphans and gave them life. That makes you the man who saved House Verantis. That makes you more than you know. Elior looked at her, his face pale, his heart lost. He remembered the alley, the cold, the hunger. He remembered how small and weak they had been. Now they stood before him as rulers, commanders, with fleets that could darken skies. And they were here. For him. For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Elior's breath shook. His hands trembled. He felt the weight of history pressing down. At last he whispered almost to himself, What have I done? The queen's eyes glowed with fire as she answered, You changed everything. The chamber glowed with quiet fire as Elior stood frozen, caught between disbelief and fear. The royal children, now grown into commanders and rulers, watched him with eyes full of memory. 10 years ago, he had seen them starving in rags. Now they stood in armor, carrying crowns and the weight of entire worlds. The queen, the same little girl who once whispered, We will not forget, stepped closer. Elior, she said softly, our lives belong to you. Without your gift, we would have died that night. Without your hope, House Verantis would have been ashes. You gave, expecting nothing, and so we owe you everything. Elior shook his head, his chest tight. No, I wanted nothing. I still want nothing. I am no one. I cannot carry your debt, the young prince smiled sadly. You already carry it, whether you want it or not. Your kindness has written your name into our house, and now the stars themselves have noticed. Elior frowned. What do you mean? The queen turned, her voice heavier now. Our enemies have not forgotten either. The ones who destroyed our family, the ones who hunted us from world to world, they know someone saved us. They know it was you, and now they will come. For you, for us, for anyone near you. A chill ran through Elior's veins. His mind raced back to the colony, his friends, the shipyard, the crowded streets. No, you can't mean... They'll come to the colony? These people have nothing. They will die if war reaches them. The Queen's eyes darkened. They will come, Elior. That is why we are here. To protect you, and to claim you as one of our own. For only as part of House Verantis can you survive what is coming. The chamber fell silent. The weight of her words pressed against Elior's chest like stone. He wanted to scream. He wanted to run. He wanted to wake up in his small, broken room, with the comfort of hunger and silence where no one knew his name. But that life was gone. Torn away the moment the great ship cast its shadow over the colony. The prince spoke again, his voice calm but sharp as a blade. The galaxy runs on debts, Elior. Some pay with gold, some with power. But the greatest debts are paid with loyalty. And you who gave us life now hold the loyalty of a kingdom. Whether you accept or not, the crown bends toward you. Elior's hands trembled. He thought of the stew, the heat of the container in his cold hands, the way the children had stared at him as if he were more than a man. He had thought it was a small thing, a simple kindness. How could something so small echo across the stars? The Queen lifted the glowing seal of House Verantis from the crystal chest. The symbol burned with fire and crown, pulsing as if alive. She raised it toward him. With this we mark you as one of us, a friend of the crown, a brother of Verantis. With this you will walk under our protection. But know this, Elior. When you carry our seal, you also carry our war. Elior stepped back, shaking his head. I am not ready for war. I am not ready for crowns, for fleets, for enemies. I only wanted to live quietly. The Queen's gaze softened, but her words were sharp. You cannot choose quiet anymore. The choice was made 10 years ago when you gave us food. Fate does not ask permission, Elior, it takes. For a long time, Elior said nothing. His heart pounded, his mind spun, and his legs felt weak. He thought of the colony, its people, their hunger, their silence. He thought of Dalen, his only friend, still working in the shipyard. Would these people be punished because of him? Finally, he whispered, if I take this seal, what happens to them? To my people? The prince answered. If you accept, we will guard them. If you refuse, our enemies will come without mercy. Either way, they are already in danger. Elior closed his eyes. He had never been brave, never been a fighter, but he could not bear the thought of his colony burned, his people slaughtered because of him. When he opened his eyes, they burned with quiet pain. Then I have no choice. The Queen stepped forward and pressed the glowing seal into his hands. Fire surged through him, hot and heavy, as if the stars themselves had marked his soul. He gasped, falling to his knees as visions flashed before him. Armies marching, fleets burning, crowns rising. His heart thundered with a power he had never known. When the fire faded, he looked down. The symbol of Verantis now glowed faintly on his palm, etched into his skin. The soldiers in the chamber knelt as one. The prince bowed his head. The Queen's voice filled the room like thunder. Rise, Elior of Verantis, the man who gave hope when all was lost, the one whose kindness saved a kingdom. Your debt is paid, but your story has only begun. Elior stood slowly, his body trembling, his mind screaming. The seal on his hand burned like destiny. Outside, in the dark corners of the galaxy, enemies stirred. Shadows of war moved closer, and in the quiet streets of the colony below, no one yet knew that their fates were tied to the simple man who had once given orphans a warm meal. The seal burned faintly on Elior's palm as he stood in the silent chamber. His hand shook, his chest felt heavy, and his thoughts spun like broken gears. He had lived a quiet life for decades. Now, with one touch, everything had changed. The soldiers still knelt before him. The Queen and Prince, the same children he had once fed in a forgotten alley, stood tall and unshaken. To them, the moment was destiny fulfilled. To Elior, it was a trap from which there was no escape. He wanted to tear the seal from his skin, to throw it back and walk away. But the fire in his hand was not just a mark, it was alive, pulsing with the weight of stars. The Queen's voice broke the silence. Elior, we have given you our name, our bond, our protection, but now you must decide. Will you walk with us into the fire of destiny, or will you turn away and let fate claim you unguarded? Her words struck him like hammer blows. His mouth was dry, but he forced himself to speak. I never asked for this. I never wanted crowns or fleets or war. I only wanted to live quietly. Why do you place this on me? The young prince stepped forward, his voice firm. Because history does not ask what you want. It asks what you are willing to do. You gave us life once, Elior. Now the galaxy demands you give again. Elior clenched his fists. He thought of the colony, the narrow streets, the hungry faces, the workers bent under endless hours of labor. He thought of Dalen, his friend, who still laughed even in hardship. If he joined the royals, would his people be saved? Or would they suffer because of him? He turned sharply, his voice rising for the first time. What about them? What about my people? Will your crown protect them, or will your war burn them to ash? If I take your path, they will pay the price. The queen's gaze softened, but her tone was unyielding. If you refuse, the enemy will strike them without hesitation. If you accept, we can shield them. But yes, Elior, there will be a price. There is always a price. Her words cut deeper than any blade. Elior walked toward the great window of the chamber. Beyond the glass, he saw the colony below, small, fragile, covered in smoke and light. For years it had been his whole world. Now it looked like a tiny speck beneath the shadow of the royal ship. He pressed his palm against the glass, feeling the seal glow against it. Why me? He whispered. The queen answered, her voice like steel wrapped in silk. Because you did what no one else would. When the galaxy turned its back on us, you gave. When all others saw only beggars, you saw children. That is why fate chooses those who act, even in small ways. Elior closed his eyes. His mind was torn between fear and duty. He wanted to walk away, to go back to the life he knew. But even as he thought it, he realized that life no longer existed. The galaxy already knew his name. Enemies already hunted him. The prince's voice was low now, almost kind. You must decide, Elior. Stay with us and be part of our house. Or return below and face the storm alone. But know this, the storm is already coming. Silence filled the chamber again. Elior's breath came fast and uneven. He felt as if two paths lay before him, both heavy, both dangerous. At last he turned back to face them. If I walk with you, he said slowly, I demand one thing. My colony must be safe. My people must be guarded. I will not see them destroyed because of me. The queen studied him for a long moment. Then she bowed her head slightly, the faintest sign of respect. Then it shall be so. By the seal of Verantis, your colony is under our protection. Any hand raised against them will be struck by us. Relief and dread warred in Elior's heart. He had won their promise, but he had also chained himself to their war. The soldiers rose as one, their armor glowing in the chamber's light. The queen stepped closer, her voice firm and final. Then it is chosen. You are no longer just Elior of the colony. You are Elior of Verantis, and the galaxy will soon know your name. Elior felt the weight of her words crash down on him. His knees trembled. He was no soldier, no leader, yet here he was, standing at the center of a storm that stretched across the stars. He whispered again, more to himself than to them. I am not ready. The queen's eyes softened. No one ever is, but when the time comes, you will be. Outside the window, the great ship moved slowly through the sky, casting its shadow across the colony. The people below looked up in fear and wonder, whispering his name though they did not yet understand why. And far away in the dark corners of the galaxy, unseen eyes watched. Enemies stirred, their fleets gathering, their voices hissing his name like a curse. The choice had been made. The path could not be undone. Elior, the man who once gave away a single meal, had now chosen a burden heavy enough to shake kingdoms, and the galaxy was waiting. The seal still glowed faintly on Elior's palm, a fire that refused to fade. Even when he tried to hide his hand, he could feel it burning against his skin, whispering of power, of destiny, of war. The queen and the prince stood tall, their armor shining in the pale light of the chamber. The soldiers bowed low, their movements sharp and perfect. To them, this was not the end, this was the beginning. But to Elior, it felt like the last breath of the life he had once known. He thought of the alley again. The cold night. The hungry children. The steaming stew he had given away. That simple choice had brought him here. To crowns, to fleets, to enemies hidden among the stars. The queen stepped forward. Her voice was steady, but her eyes burned with fire. Elior, the galaxy will change because of you. Already the enemy gathers. Already your name travels farther than you can imagine. You must be ready, for they will test you, and when they come you cannot falter. Elior's heart pounded. He wanted to argue, to refuse, to run. But deep inside he knew the truth. The choice had been made. The storm was coming whether he wanted it or not. The prince raised his staff, striking the ground with a sound like thunder. From this day, Elior of the colony is Elior of Varantis, the man who gave hope when all was lost, the brother of a crown, the one who carries the dead of stars. The chamber echoed with their voices as the soldiers repeated in unison, Elior of Varantis. The name rolled through the air like a wave, heavy and unstoppable. Elior lowered his head. His hands trembled. His stomach twisted. He was no warrior. He was no leader. But the galaxy did not care. The galaxy had chosen him. The queen's hand rested on his shoulder, firm and warm. "You will not walk alone," she said. "We will guide you. We will fight beside you. But your path is your own to walk, and in time you must decide what kind of man Elior of Varantis will be." Her words struck him deeper than the seal itself. What kind of man would he be? A savior, a soldier, or just a broken worker pulled too far into a war not his own? The ship hummed around them, alive with quiet power. Outside the window, the colony glowed beneath the shadow of the fleet. People looked up, pointing, whispering. Some feared. Some hoped. None of them knew what had already begun. Elior turned to the window, staring at the city. His home, his people. For years he had lived among them as just another worker, faceless and forgotten. Now they looked at him as if he were something more. He felt the weight of their eyes, though they could not see him. He whispered so soft that only he could hear. "I will not fail you." The queen's gaze followed his. She said nothing, but her lips curved into the faintest smile, as if she understood. Then the ship moved. Its engines roared like 1,000 storms, lifting it higher into the sky. The colony grew smaller below, until it was only a patch of light against the dark. Elior's chest ached as he watched it vanish into the distance. For the first time in his life, he was leaving the world he had always known. But the galaxy was waiting. The prince led him through long corridors of silver and crystal, past soldiers who bowed, past windows that looked out into endless stars. Every step felt heavier. Every breath felt like he was walking deeper into something he could not escape. At last they reached the command deck. The queen stood before a vast table of light, maps of star systems glowing in the air above it. Fleets moved like sparks across the projection. Battle lines were drawn in colors of fire and blood. Elior stared, his body stiff. This was no dream. This was war. The queen looked at him. "Your story does not end here, Elior. It begins. The galaxy will soon test us, and when it does, the act of kindness you gave will become the sword and shield of kingdoms." Elior felt the seal burn again. His hand shook, but he raised it slowly, staring at the symbol etched into his skin. A crown, a flame, a promise. He still felt fear, but beneath it something else stirred. A spark, a strange strength he had never known. Perhaps the queen was right. Perhaps no one was ever ready. But he could try. He took a deep breath. His voice was quiet but firm. "Then let it begin." The queen bowed her head. The prince smiled faintly. The soldiers raised their staffs. And above the silent colony, the great royal ship turned its face toward the stars. The dawn was no longer behind them. It was before them. The man who once gave orphans a warm meal now carried the future of a kingdom in his hands, and the galaxy would never forget his name.